situation, Hotravhan approached Emma with a gentle heart, and she poured out her story to him. She explained how she had been rejected by Bhishma, the son of Ganga, who had taken her sisters as wives instead. Hotravhana listened attentively, his eyes filled with compassion, and when she finished speaking, he knew what he had to do. Comforted Emma, taking her onto his lap and stroking her hair. "Do not go back to your father's abode," he said softly. "I am the father of your mother, and I will protect you. There is another who can help you, a great sage named Rama, the son of Jamedid Night. He has the power to dispel your sorrow and bring you peace." Hema was skeptical at first, but Hotravhana's words gave her hope. She asked him how she could find this Rama and what he would do to help her. Hotravhana explained that Rama lived in a distant mountain range, surrounded by wise sages and celestial beings. He told Emma to tell Rama everything that had happened, and to ask for his guidance. Just then Akritavrana, a trusted companion of Rama, arrived at the scene. Hotravhana greeted him warmly and asked about Rama's whereabouts. Akritavrana replied that Rama would be arriving the next morning, and that Emma could meet him when he came. He also inquired about Emma's story and her connection to Hotravhana. Hotravhana explained that Emma was his granddaughter, the daughter of his own child, and that she had been rejected by Bhishma during a swayamvara ceremony. Akritavrana listened intently, his eyes filled with understanding, and when Hotravhana finished speaking, he nodded in agreement, and so with Hotravhana's guidance and support, Emma set out on her journey to find Rama, hoping that the great sage would bring her peace and protection. Little did she know that her fate was about to take a dramatic turn, one that would change the course of her life forever. In the midst of a tranquil forest where the gentle breeze carried neither cold nor heat, a wise sage named Akritavrana sat in deep contemplation. His eyes sparkled with compassion as he gazed at the lovely Emma, whose heart was heavy with sorrow. "Tell me, O blessed lady," he said gently, "which of your two afflictions do you wish to have remedied? Is it that you desire Rama, the high-souled prince, to urge Lord Saudha to marry you, or perhaps you wish to see Bhishma, Ganga's son, defeated in battle by intelligent Rama?" Emma's eyes welled up with tears as she recounted her tale of woe. "I was abducted by Bhishma, who acted out of ignorance," she said, her voice trembling. "He did not know that my heart belonged to Salva, the ruler of the souls. I implore you, wise one, to consider justice and resolve upon a course of action that is consistent with virtue." Akritavrana listened attentively, his expression filled with empathy. He nodded thoughtfully, then spoke in a measured tone. "If Bhishma had not taken you by force, King Salva would have accepted you as his own. But now, due to Bhishma's actions, Salva's suspicions are aroused. I suggest that you cause your vengeance to fall upon Bhishma alone." Emma's face lit up with a fierce determination. "I have longed for this very thing," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "If possible, I wish Bhishma to be slain in battle. Punish him, O wise one, and through his defeat bring an end to my misery." As the sun began to set, casting a warm orange glow over the forest, Rama, the descendant of Ryu, arrived on the scene. His eyes shone with kindness as he beheld Emma's beauty and her youthful body delicate as a lotus flower. He listened attentively as she recounted her tale of woe, his heart filled with compassion. Finally, after Emma had spoken, Rama addressed Bhishma, saying, "I will send word to you, O king. If you do not act according to my words, I will consume you in battle along with all your counselors." He turned to Emma and said, "Do not worry, fair one, I will see justice." Then Emma's eyes sparkled with gratitude as she touched Rama's feet, her hands like lotus petals on his sacred skin. She wept aloud, her heart filled with joy at the prospect of Bhishma's defeat. "Slay him on my arm, Rama," she begged. "He is covetous and proud, but you are sinless and just. Grant my desire and bring an end to my suffering."
The sun was setting over the land as Rama, the mighty warrior, sat in contemplation with Bhishma, his revered uncle. Emma, a beautiful maiden from Kesai, had been pleading with Rama to slay Bhishma, who had become an obstacle in her path. Her words were laced with desperation and urgency, and Rama's heart went out to her. "O Lord," he said gently to Emma, "I do not take up arms for personal reasons, but only for the sake of those who are conversant with the Vedas. Tell me, what else can I do for you? Bhishma and Salva are both obedient to me, and I will accomplish your object." Rema's words were a promise, a reassurance that he would find a way to resolve Emma's troubles, but Emma was insistent, her voice rising in emotion as she begged Rema to slay Bhishma. "My misery, O Holy One," she cried, "should by any means be dispelled by you. That misery of mine has been caused by Bhishma. Slay him, therefore, O Lord." Without much delay her words cut deep into Rema's heart, and he knew that he had to find a way to help her. Rema turned to Bhishma and said, "O daughter of Kesai, say but the word, and Bhishma, however deserving of reverence from you, will at my word take up your feet on his head." Emma's eyes sparkled with hope as she replied, "O Rema, slay in battle that Bhishma, who roars like an azure, indeed summoned to the encounter by him. Slay him, O Rema, if thou wishest. What is agreeable to me, Bhishma, however, was not one to be easily swayed. He knew his duty and his honor, and he would not back down from a challenge." As the debate between Rema and Emma continued, the wise Rishaka Devrana spoke up, cautioning Rema against deserting the maiden who sought his protection. "It behooves you not, O mighty armed one," said the Risha, "to desert this girl that seeketh thee protection. If summoned to battle, Bhishma cometh to the encounter, and saith, I am vanquished, or if he obeyeth thee words, then that which this maiden seeketh will be accomplished, O son of Phrygia's race, and the words spoken by thee, O hero, will also, O Lord, be true." Risha reminded Rema of his vow made before Brahmanas, a vow to slay in battle any foe to the Brahmanas. Bhishma, that proud warrior, had achieved great success over all the Kshatriyas, but Rema knew that he could.
In the midst of a bustling kingdom, Bhishma received an unexpected visit from Jamadagni's son, Rema. The latter had arrived with great fanfare, accompanied by a cow and many brahmanas, priests, and other honored guests. As Bhishma approached him, Rema accepted his worship and began to speak in a tone that was both authoritative and stern. Rema accused Bhishma of abducting the daughter of the king of Kasai on her self-choice day, thereby contaminating her virtue. He demanded that Bhishma take the girl back and marry her himself, as it was not proper for her to be rejected by Salwa. Due to Bhishma's actions, Rema's words were laced with anger, his eyes rolling in fury as he threatened to slay Bhishma along with all his counselors if he did not complete. Bhishma, however, remained steadfast, recalling the preceptor-student relationship between him and Rema. He explained that the girl had chosen Salwa of her own free will, and that he could not abandon Kshatriya practices due to fear or pity. Bhishma beseeched Rema with sweet words, but the latter refused to cool down. Rema's anger only intensified as he reminded Bhishma of their past relationship, where he had taught the young prince the 4 kinds of arms. He accused Bhishma of not acting in accordance with his preceptor's wishes and demanded that he take the girl back. Bhishma countered by explaining the principles of virtue and duty, stating that a Kshatriya must behave towards others as they deserve. The debate continued with Rema boasting about his past conquests, and Bhishma countering with his own prowess. The two engaged in a verbal sparring match, each trying to outdo the other. In the end, Rema challenged Bhishma to single combat on the field of Kurukshetra, where he would be sanctified by Bhishma's weapons. Bhishma accepted the challenge, and as they parted ways, Rema taunted him about his impending defeat. He warned that Bhishma would soon meet his end at his hands, and that his mother Janavi would weep for him when she saw him lying dead on the plain with a file of flowers. Rema set off towards Kurukshetra, leaving Bhishma to prepare for their impending battle. The stage was set for this epic confrontation. It seemed clear that the outcome would be far from certain. The two warriors were evenly matched in terms of strength and prowess, and only time would tell who would emerge victorious. The sun was setting on the battlefield, casting a golden glow over the scene. Bhishma, the great warrior, stood tall on his magnificent chariot, its wooden walls adorned with intricate carvings and gleaming gold ornaments. His eyes locked onto Rema, the mighty prince of Ayodhya, who was standing steadfastly on the earth, his body encased in a coat of mail woven from the sacred threads of the Vedas. Bhishma smiled warmly as he addressed Rema. "My dear hero, I do not wish to fight you. While you stand on the earth, mount onto my chariot, and let us engage in battle with honor." But Rema's response was unexpected. With a mischievous twinkle in his eyes, he said, "The earth is my chariot, O Bhishma, and the Vedas are my steeds. The wind carries me forward, and my coat of mail is the love and devotion of my mothers, Gayatri, Sayatri, and Saraswati." Bhishma's face lit up with admiration for Rema's unique approach to battle. He watched in awe as Rema, unfazed by his words, began to unleash a torrent of arrows upon him. The air was filled with the whirring sound of wings, As Bhishma's chariot steeds were struck down one by one despite being outmatched, Bhishma remained steadfast, his coat of mail protecting him from the hail of arrows. The battle raged on for many days. Each warrior determined to emerge victorious. Rama struck Bhishma with 960 arrows, but the older warrior refused to yield. His words were laced with respect and admiration as he addressed Rama. "Once more you have shown little regard for me. Yet I honor your preceptorship. Listen, O Brahmana, to a new duty that you must discharge, the duty of compassion." Bhishma's eyes flashed with anger as he shot back at Rama with a sharp arrow, striking off one of his horns. But Rama was not deterred, and he retaliated with 100 arrows that seemed to vomit blood from their mouths. Like snakes writhing in agony, the battle reached its climax, with both warriors exchanging blows, each one landing with precision. The fight wore on. Bhishma's body began to tremble beneath his coat of mail. His eyes grew dim, and he stumbled backward, overcome by grief. "Of on battle," he exclaimed, "Fie on Kshatriya practices. I have afflicted my preceptor with arrows. A Brahmana, endued with a virtue soul, the thousand-ray luminary." The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the battlefield in shadows. The battle ceased, and Bhishma, overcome by remorse, ceased his attacks as he gazed upon Rama's. The sun had barely risen over the battlefield when Bhishma, the mighty warrior, prepared for another fierce encounter with Rama. The son of Jamedi, by his charioteers skilled in removing arrows from their bodies, carefully extracted the projectiles that still lodged in Bhishma's armor and those of his steeds. The stallions, refreshed after a good bath and some rest, were now ready to charge into battle once more. As Bhishma approached Rama, resplendent in his coat of mail, he could see the determination in the eyes of his adversary. With a deep breath, Bhishma dismounted from his chariot, saluted Rama, and then climbed back onto his vehicle, eager to face his foe. The two warriors exchanged blows, their arrows flying through the air like deadly snakes. Bhishma unleashed a torrent of sharp shafts, but Rama countered with an equal number, each one cutting down the others in midair. The combatants clashed for hours, their movements swift and precise. Bhishma hurled celestial weapons at Rama, who deflected them with his own divine projectiles. The two warriors neutralized each other's attacks, neither gaining the upper hand. However, as the battle raged on, Rama's anger grew, and he suddenly wheeled to his right, striking Bhishma in the breast. Bhishma felt a searing pain course through his body, and he slumped forward, losing consciousness. His charioteer quickly bore him away from the battlefield, but not before the followers of Rama, including Akutavrana and the princess of Kesai, let out joyful shouts at their victorious. Bhishma regained consciousness. He instructed his charioteer to take him back to Rama's location. He was determined to continue fighting despite the pain that still lingered in his body. When they arrived, Bhishma confronted Rama once more. But this time the outcome would be different. The two warriors clashed again, their arrows flying through the air like a deadly storm. Bhishma shot at Rama with an arrow of blazing effulgence, and for a moment it seemed as though his adversary was about to fall. But Rama managed to neutralize the blow, and then he struck back, piercing Bhishma's left side. Bhishma felt a wave of dizziness wash over him, but he refused to yield. He began to shoot arrows with great lightness of hand, trying to obstruct Rama's arrowy show. The battle raged on, the two warriors exchanging blows, their movements swift and precise. But as the sun began to set, Bhishma's preceptor Drona, determined withdrawing his pupil from the fight. The combatants paused for a moment. It seemed as though the very fabric of reality had been torn apart. The air was filled. The next day's battle between Bhishma and Rama was a clash of titans, a spectacle that would be etched in the memories of all who witnessed it. As the combat began anew, Rama unleashed his celestial arsenal upon Bhishma, employing a variety of divine weapons that shook the very foundations of the earth. Bhishma, however, was no ordinary warrior, a skilled and seasoned fighter. He had mastered the art of countering even the most potent of celestial arms with each successive blow from Rama's arsenal. Bhishma retaliated with his own counter weapons, neutralizing the effects of Rama's attacks. Undeterred by the failure of his initial onslaught, Rama charged forward once more, this time unleashing a blazing lance that seemed to fill the world with its intense effulgence. The lance, forged from the very essence of destruction, itself resembled the dart hurled by Death himself. Bhishma, unfazed by the ferocity of the attack, countered with his arrows, cutting the lance into 3 fragments that shone like the sun breaking through the darkness at the end of a yugas. The battle raged on. The air was filled with the sweet scent of fragrant breezes that seemed to dance around. Bhishma, Rama, enraged by the failure of his lance, hurled a dozen more blazing darts at Bhishma. These missiles, resembling long tongues of fire and blazing forth with fierce energy, like the dozen suns that rose at the time of universal destruction, threatened to engulf Vishma in their infernal fury. Vishma, however, was not one to be intimidated by such displays of power with a steady hand and an unwavering spirit. He batted aside Brahma's darts with his arrows, sending them crashing to the ground like autumn leaves before a mighty storm. The high-souled son of Jamadagni then showered Bhishma with numerous fierce-looking darts, each one furnished with variegated handles, decked in gold, and possessing golden wings that shone like blazing meteors. Bhishma countered Rama's attacks with ease, his shield and sword deflecting the darts and causing them to fall to the ground with clouds of excellent arrows. He then covered Rama's steeds and charioteer, rendering them powerless against his onslaught. Enraged by this turn of events, Rama resorted once more to celestial weapons, unleashing swarms of fierce arrows that descended upon Bhishma. Like a flight of locusts, the battle raged on, with both combatants exchanging blows and neither gaining the upper hand. Bhishma's steeds, charioteer, and car were overwhelmed by Rama's heroic shower, their yoke shaft, wheels, and wheel spokes shattering under the relentless onslaught. But even as his own vehicle was, the sun rose brightly on the battlefield, casting a golden glow over the slain Bhishma. The great warrior of the Bharata clan stood tall, his eyes fixed intently on his opponent, Rama, son of Jamadagni's line. The air was electric with tension as they faced each other, their bows at the ready. The battle raged on, with Rama unleashing a torrent of arrows that seemed to rain down from the sky like a deluge. Bhishma's charioteer, his trusted companion and friend, fell victim to one of these deadly shafts, striking him down in a swoon. Bhishma was consumed by grief, his heart heavy with sorrow as he lamented the loss of his loyal steersman. But even in the midst of his anguish, Rama continued to press his attack, drawing back his bowstring and releasing another arrow that pierced deep into Bhishma's breast. The great warrior felt a searing pain as the shaft struck true, and for a moment he lay still on the ground, his body trembling with the force of the blow. Yet even in death, Bhishma refused to yield. Summoning all his strength, he slowly rose to his feet, supported by 8 brahmanas who surrounded him like a shining ear. They lifted him up, bearing him aloft, as they sprinkled water over his wounded body and whispered words of comfort into his ear. Vishwa's mother, the great river goddess Ganga, appeared on the scene, her presence a beacon of hope in the midst of chaos. She took control of Bhishma's steeds, guiding them with an unseen hand as he ascended his chariot once more with joined bands. Bhishma entreated his mother to depart, and she vanished into the distance, leaving him to face Rama alone. The battle raged on, with both warriors trading blows and neither gaining the upper hand. But as the day wore on, Bhishma landed the decisive blow, striking Rama with an arrow that sent him tumbling to the ground. The skies grew dark, and omens of evil began to appear. Clouds poured forth, blood meteors flashed across the firmament, and thunder rolls shook the earth. As night fell, both warriors ceased their combat, exhausted by the ferocity of the battle. But when dawn broke on the next day, they resumed their fight, locked in a struggle that would last for 23 days. As the sun set over the battlefield, Bhishma lay on his bed, his weary body itching from the relentless combat with Rama, son of Jamadagni. For many days the two warriors had clashed in a fierce and terrible struggle, their strength and skill evenly matched despite his valiant efforts. Bhishma couldn't shake off the feeling that he was no match for Rama's mighty energy. As he drifted into sleep, Bhishma's mind began to wander back to the events of the past few days. He remembered how he had fallen from his chariot and been comforted by those wise brahmanas who had raised him up and spoken words of encouragement. "Do not fear," they had said, their voices echoing in his mind even now. But as he lay there, Bhishma's thoughts turned to the gods. He felt a deep sense of longing for their guidance and assistance. If only they would show themselves to him. This night revealed to him some secret or hidden power that could tip the balance of the battle in his favor, and so with an open heart and mind he surrendered himself to the darkness. It was then that the dream began. Bhishma felt himself surrounded by 8 radiant brahmanas, their bodies shining like stars in the night sky. They spoke to him in a voice that was both familiar and yet utterly otherworldly. "Rise, O Gang's son," they said. "You have no need to fear. We will protect you, for you are our own body." Their words were like a balm to his weary soul. The brahmanas told Bhishma that he would vanquish Rama in battle, that the son of Jamadagni was no match for him, and they revealed to him a secret, a mysterious weapon known as Praswapa, forged by the divine artificer and imbued with the power of the gods. This was a weapon that neither Rama nor any other living being knew how to wield, but one that Bhishma had once known in a past life of Brahmanas instructed Bhishma to recall this forgotten knowledge to apply. Yet with strength and courage, they assured him that using Prasvata would not bring him shame or guilt, for Rama would survive the blow and be awakened again in battle. And so, armed with this newfound understanding, Bhishma knew what he had to do. When morning came, a dream faded, leaving Bhishma feeling a sense of peace and purpose. He knew that the Brahmanas had spoken truthfully, guiding him towards victory over Rama. With a renewed sense of determination, he rose from his bed, ready to face whatever lay ahead on the battlefield. The sun had barely risen over the battlefield, casting a golden glow over the assembled warriors. Bhishma, the mighty warrior and son of Ganga, stirred from his slumber, his heart still aglow with the memories of his dream. In that dream, he had seen himself victorious in battle, his armor shining like the sun, and his enemies fleeing in terror as he stood up ready to face the day ahead. Bhishma's thoughts turned to Rama, Jamadagni's son, who had been challenging him since dawn. The two warriors faced each other, their eyes locked in a fire stare. Rama, fueled by his anger and determination, hurled a dart at Bhishma, one that was as hard as Indra's thunderbolt and shone like the Yavasmasa dart, flew towards Bhishma with deadly precision, its trajectory like a blazing flame of fire, drinking up all the space around it. But Bhishma was no ordinary warrior. He had faced countless battles and had mastered the art of combat. He dodged the dart, but it struck his shoulder, leaving a deep gash that flowed with blood like a mountain stream. After a heavy shower, Bhishma's rage knew no bounds as he retaliated by shooting a deadly shaft at Rama, one that was as poisonous as a snake's venom. The arrow pierced Rama's forehead, and the young warrior stumbled, his vision blurring. But even in his pain, Rama found the strength to draw his bowstring and aim another dart at Bhishma. This time it was like a bolt of lightning striking the sky. The arrow flew straight towards Bhishma's breast, hissing with deadly intent. The warrior stumbled, covered in blood, but he refused to yield. He regained consciousness and shot back the frightful dart that shone like the thunderbolt. This one struck Rama's bosom, leaving him stunned and trembling. His Rama's friend Dekritavrata rushed to his side to comfort him. Bhishma's anger only grew. The two warriors continued their duel, each shooting powerful darts at each other. But this time they invoked the great Brahma whip on a mighty force that shook the very foundations of the universe. The air was filled with an intense energy as the two weapons clashed in midair, creating a spectacle unlike anything seen before. The Vulcan itself seemed to blaze with fire, and all creatures watched in awe as the rishis, Gant, harvest gods, and even the earth trembled with fear. The firmament became ablaze, and the horizon was filled with smoke as the world around them descended into chaos. Bhishma realized that this was the moment to end the battle. He thought of his dream where he had seen himself victorious in battle, and he knew what he had to do next with a newfound determination. The sun beat down upon the battlefield, casting a golden glow over the warriors as they clashed. I, Bhishma, stood tall, my eyes fixed on Rama, the son of Phrygu's descendant. My resolve was unwavering to vanquish him in battle, no matter the cost. I prepared to unleash the Prasvata whip. On a din of tumultuous voices arose in the sky. The gods themselves seemed to be warning me away from this path. Do not let off the Prasvata whip on, they cried, their voices echoing through the heavens. But I was resolute, and I aimed the whip on Rama. Just as I was about to release it, Narada appeared before me, his words piercing my heart. Like an arrow yonder, O Kuravya, stay the gods in the sky, even they are forbidding thee today, he exclaimed, and then I saw them. 8 utterers of Brahma stationed in the sky, their faces radiant with compassion. Their words were gentle, but firm. O chief of the Bharatas, do even what Narada saith. They said, even that Obesa Bharata's race is highly beneficial to the world. I hesitated, my resolve wavering for a moment, and then I remembered my vow to never desist from battle, no matter the cost. I withdrew the Prasvata whip and invoked the Brahmastra. Instead, Brahma was furious, his face twisted in anger as he exclaimed, wretch, I am vanquished, O Bhishma. But then something remarkable happened. His ancestors appeared before him, his venerable father and grandfather, their faces filled with compassion. They spoke to Rama in words of comfort, reminding him of his duty as a Kshatriya. O sire, never display such rashness. Again they said, study of the Vedas and practice of vows are the highest wealth of Brahmanas. They urged him to leave the battle, to abandon his foolish vow and seek a higher path. Rama refused, his heart stubborn as ever, But then something miraculous occurred. The gods themselves intervened, sending their messengers to Rima's side. The hearts of Brahmanas are made of butter, they said, be pacified. Therefore, O son of Pridya's race, O Rama, desist from this battle, O best of Brahmanas. And slowly Rama began to see sense. He placed aside his weapons, and I, Bhishma, approached him with reverence in my heart. The gods themselves smiled upon me, their faces radiant with joy, though of mighty arms. They said, Go unto Rama, who is the preceptor, do what is beneficial to all the worlds. In the midst of battle, Rama stood before Bhishma, his opponent's superior skill evident. Udensal Rama said in the very sight of all these persons, I have fought according to the best of my power and displayed my prowess by using even the very best of weapons. I have not been able to obtain any advantage over Bhishma, that foremost of all wielders of weapons. The maiden's eyes flashed with determination as she replied, I will not go a second time to Bhishma. I will, however, a perpetrator of Pridya's race, go thither, where I may slay Bhishma in battle. With those words, the maiden vanished into the forest, her heart burning with a fierce resolve to devote herself to asceticism. Rama watched her go, his own heart heavy with sorrow and concern. He knew that Bhishma was an unyielding foe, one who could not be vanquished by even the gods themselves. As the days passed, Rama's spies brought him news of the maiden's unwavering dedication to her vows. She had entered the woods determined to practice austerities beyond human endurance. For 6 months she stood unmoving, surviving on air alone, her body emaciated and dry. Then for another year she stood in the waters of the Yamuna, fasting from all food, undeterred by the passing of time. The princess of Kesai continued to roam the land, visiting sacred sites and practicing even more severe penances. She bathed frequently in the waters of Vatsavyuma, a retreat renowned for its holiness. Next she proceeded to the asylum of Narada, then to that of Ulka, Chavana, and Pragya, each time performing ablutions in the sacred waters and observing the most difficult vows. Her mother Satyavati eventually discovered her daughter's whereabouts and asked her the reason for her self-imposed suffering. The princess replied, Rama has been vanquished by Bhishma in battle. What other king would dare to challenge him? I am practicing these penances to destroy Bhishma. That is my one desire. Hearing this, the river Ganges spoke up, offering words of caution and warning. O lady, you are acting crookedly. Your wish will not be fulfilled, for if you observe these vows with the intention of destroying Bhishma, and take leave of your body, while doing so in your next birth, you shall become a river crooked in her course and dry. For 8 months of the year you shall be filled only during the rains, and full of terrifying creatures that inspire fear in all who encounter them. The princess' resolve was unshaken. However, she continued to practice her vows, sometimes fasting from food and water for 10 months at a time. Eventually, in the sacred land of Vatsavyuma, where wise ascetics dwelled in contemplation, a young princess named Sita from the kingdom of Kesai had come seeking to embark on a path of severe asceticism. Her resolve was unwavering, driven by a deep-seated desire for revenge against Bhishma, the son of Genya, and a powerful warrior who had thwarted her plans to marry and live a life of domestic bliss. Sita stood firm in her determination. The venerable ascetics approached her with concern, asking what drove this young woman to seek such a drastic path. Sita's words were like a tempest, shaking the very foundations of their wisdom. I have been cast aside by Bhishma, she declared, prevented from realizing my true potential as a wife and mother. My vow is not for personal gain or spiritual growth, but to bring about his downfall and bring me peace. The ascetics old in the ways of penance and wisdom tried to reason with her, but Sita's resolve only grew stronger. I will not rest until I have slain Bhishma, she vowed, for he has wronged me and denied me my rightful place as a woman. Her words were laced with a fierce determination that sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned sages. It was then that Shiva, the divine lord of Yuma, bearing the trident, appeared to Sita in all his glory. The ascetics, awestruck by the god's presence, fell silent as he spoke directly to the young woman. What boon you desire, he asked, and with a fierce passion burning within her, Sita begged for Bhishma's defeat at her hand. Shiva, moved by her fervor, promised that she would indeed slay Bhishma and obtain manhood, but also warned her of the challenges ahead. As a woman, he cautioned, you will face many obstacles in battle. Yet Sita was undeterred, her heart burning with an unquenchable fire. Shiva, known as Kapardhan, having the bull for his symbol, then spoke words that would change Sita's fate.
For ever you shall slay Bhishma, and become a Mahabharata born in the line of Drupada. He declared, your prowess on the battlefield will be unmatched, and you will remember all the incidents of this life, even when you obtain a new body. With these words, Shiva vanished as suddenly as he appeared, leaving Sita to ponder the weight of his promises. The ascetics watched in awe as Sita set about fulfilling her vow. She gathered wood from the forest and constructed a massive funeral pyre on the banks of the Yamuna with a heart ablaze with anger and determination. She entered the flames, uttering words that would echo through eternity.
In the midst of war-torn Kurukshetra, Duryodhana, the eldest son of Dhritarashtra, sought to understand the mysterious tale of Sikandin, the warrior born from the womb of Princess Draupadi. He turned to his grandfather Bhishma. Seeking enlightenment on this enigmatic figure, Bhishma began his tale by recounting the story of King Drupada, a powerful monarch who had long been childless, with his beloved Queen Desperate for an heir. Drupada undertook the most austere penances, offering prayers to Lord Shiva, seeking a son to avenge himself against Bhishma. Moved by Drupada's devotion, Shiva appeared before him and granted his wish, but with a caveat: the child would be born as a female first, only later transforming into a male. Drupada returned to his kingdom, eager to share the news with his queen. My dear wife, he said, I have performed the most arduous penances, praying to Shiva for a son. He has granted my wish, but with one condition: our child will be born as a daughter first and then become a male. The queen listened intently, her eyes filled with hope. His fate wavered. The queen's season arrived, and she gave birth to a beautiful daughter. But Drupada, determined to fulfill his dream of having a son, declared that their child was indeed a boy. He ordered all the rites for a male infant to be performed, bestowing upon her the name Sikandin. Only Bhishma, through his spies and Narada's words, knew the truth, that the child was born as a daughter first. The queen, too, kept the secret, carefully concealing the true sex of their child from all but Prishada, Drupada's trusted advisor. Together they played along with the ruse, even as Bhishma watched with knowing eyes, aware of the divine decree that had been set in motion. And so Sikandin grew up unaware of her own mysterious past, destined to play a crucial role in the epic battle of Kurukshetra. As Duryodhana listened intently to Bhishma's tale, he began to grasp the intricacies of fate and the divine will that had shaped the course of events. The story of Sikandin served as a poignant reminder that even the most seemingly ordinary lives are woven from threads of destiny, waiting to be revealed in their true form. In the kingdom of Panchala, King Drupada was overjoyed at the growth and development of his daughter. He had dedicated himself to her upbringing, teaching her the finest arts and skills, including writing, painting, and music. She had also become an accomplished archer under the tutelage of the great teacher Drona. As she blossomed into a beautiful young woman, King Drupada's wife urged him to find a suitable bride for their daughter, treating her as if she were a something Prishada. Drupada's father was consulted on the matter, and he began to deliberate with his queen about finding an appropriate match for their granddaughter. Meanwhile, Drupada himself seemed uncertain, as if waiting for some divine guidance. His wife assured him that the words of the gods were always true, and that they should proceed with the wedding arrangements. The royal couple decided to choose a bride from the kingdom of Desarnachus. After careful consideration, they selected the daughter of King Hiranyavarman, who is renowned for his power and military prowess. The king of Desarnachus agreed to give away his daughter in marriage to Sikandin, Drupada's son. The wedding celebrations concluded, both daughters reached the prime of their youth. However, it soon became apparent that Sikandin was not a man at all, but a woman. Hiranyavarman's daughter discovered this truth and confided in her nurses and companions. The news spread like wildfire, and the Desarnachus kingdom was filled with grief. The king of Desarnachus was enraged upon hearing the news, and he dispatched a messenger to Drupada's court. The envoy approached the king privately and delivered a stern message from Hiranyavarman. You have deceived me. I was insulted by your actions, and now you will reap the consequences. You sought my daughter for your own child, a woman masquerading as a man. Now wait a little while, for I will soon unleash my wrath upon you and your entire family. The weight of Hiranyavarman's words hung heavy in the air, and Drupada's court was filled with an ominous sense of foreboding. The king's fate seemed sealed, and his kingdom trembled at the prospect of war with the powerful Desarnachus. In the court of Hastinapura, Bhishma stood before King Dhritarashtra and told a tale of deception and betrayal. Thus addressed: O king, Bhishma began by that messenger, King Drupada, was like a thief caught in the act. He could not speak, for his words were stuck in his throat. King Dhritarashtra's curiosity was piqued as Bhishma continued to recount the events. King Hiranyavarman, Drupada's brother, Bhishma said had been deceived by his sister-in-law into believing that their child, Sikhandan, was a daughter. But when he discovered the truth, he did not hesitate to take action with a fierce determination in his heart. King Hiranyavarman rallied his powerful friends and mustered a large army to march against Drupada as Bhishma spoke. The scene unfolded before us like a drama on stage. We saw King Hiranyavarman, his face set with resolve, sending messages to all his allies about the deception that had been practiced upon him. He summoned them to gather around him and discussed a plan of action. If Sikhandan is indeed a daughter, they agreed, we will bind Drupada and drag him from his city, install another king in Panchala, and then slay Drupada with Sikhandan. With this fixed resolution, King Hiranyavarman sent an envoy to Drupada once more, saying, I will slay thee, become King. Drupada, however, was not naturally courageous. The offense of his sister-in-law had filled him with fear, and he became afflicted with grief. He retreated to his palace, surrounded by the weight of his troubles. His wife, the mother of Sikhandan, stood before him, her face a picture of concern. My powerful brother, King Drupada, said, his voice trembling with anxiety, King Hiranyavarman is coming towards me in anger. What are we to do now? Our daughter Sikhandan has been suspected to be a girl. He wishes to slay me, thinking that I have deceived him. His wife's eyes met his, and she spoke words of wisdom. Tell us, O beautiful laddie. King Drupada implored, what is the truth in this? What should we do? His queen looked at him with a calm expression. She knew the weight of her husband's words, but also the gravity of the situation, and so she spoke, her voice like a gentle breeze on a summer day. In the midst of impending war, King Drupada sat in deep contemplation, his mind consumed by the thought of facing his brother, the ruler of the Desarnicus. His queen, a wise and compassionate woman, entered the room, her eyes filled with concern for her lord's well-being. Honor to the gods is always beneficial, she said gently, especially in times of distress. We must pay homage to those who are our superiors and worship all the gods, making generous offerings to the Brahmanas. Let us pour oblations on the fire to pacify the ruler of the Desarnicus. Perhaps through their grace we can find a way to resolve this conflict without bloodshed. The king's thoughts were elsewhere, however, as he pondered the fate that awaited him and his family. His daughter Sikhandan was also lost in her own world of sorrow. She had been born a girl, but her parents had deceived the king of the Desarnicus into believing she was a son, and now her presence was the very reason for the impending war. As the king and queen continued to discuss their options, Sikhandan's thoughts turned inward. It is I who have brought this suffering upon my family, she thought to herself, filled with shame and regret. She decided that the only way to alleviate her family's pain was to end her own life with a heavy heart. Sikhandan left her home and ventured into a dense forest, avoiding the eyes of her parents, as she made her way to a solitary mansion deep within the woods. The mansion belonged to a formidable Diksha named Sthanakarna, who ruled over the forest with an iron fist. Men rarely dared to venture into this place for fear of the Yaksha's wrath. Sikhandan spent many days in the mansion, subsisting on nothing but her own result. It was there that she met Sthana, a kind-hearted Gaika who was a follower of the Lord of Treasures. Sthana discovered Sikhandan's determination to end her life and offered to help her achieve her goal. However, Sikhandan hesitated, unsure if even the Yaksha could grant her wish. You are unable to accomplish it, she said, but Sthana reassured her that he was a powerful being who could grant any boon, no matter how impossible it seemed. Sikhandan then poured out her heart to Sthana, telling him of her family's troubles and the impending war. She begged him to save her father, her mother, and herself from destruction. As long as that king does not leave our city, she implored, show me your mercy. Great Ichasthana listened intently, his heart filled with compassion for the young princess. He vowed to help her achieve her goal, and together they hatched a plan to prevent her. In the realm of ancient Arata, a tale of transformation and consequence unfolded. Bhishma, the revered sage, began to recount the story of Sikhandan, the daughter of King Drupada of Panchala. Sikhandan's life had been marked by misfortune, and she had been afflicted by destiny. A Yaksha named Sthana, who possessed immense power and was a ranger of the skies, had taken pity on her. He revealed to Sikhandan that he would give her his manhood for a certain period, but in return she must promise to restore it to him once the ruler of Thessalonica departed from their city. Zichand I desperate to save her family, and kingdom agreed to Sthana's terms. They made a covenant, and through a mysterious ritual, they exchanged their sexes. Zichand I, now possessing the form of a man, entered her father's court with great joy, where she was welcomed by King Drupada Thessalonica. King Hyrne of Armon, however, was not convinced that Zichand was indeed a male. He dispatched a Brahmana to inform King Drupada that his daughter had been deceived, and that he would exterminate him along with his family, if the truth were not revealed. But King Drupada, assuming a mild demeanor, sent an envoy to Hyrne of Armon with a counter-message stating that Zichand was indeed a male of Thessalonica. King, still skeptical, decided to send a group of young ladies to ascertain the truth about Zichand's sex. These women, upon their return, informed Hyrne of Armon that Zichand was indeed a powerful man. The ruler of Thessalonica, filled with joy and relief, then departed from Panchala, rebuking his daughter for her role in the deception. However, Sthana, still bearing a feminine form, did not approach the lord of Vycha's Vaisravana. Due to shame, he had given away his manhood to Zichand and taken on her femininity. The lord of Vycha's was enraged by this transgression, and cursed Sthana, saying that he would remain a woman, while Zichand would remain a man until the latter's death. Vycha's, moved by Sthana's plight, pleaded with Vaisravana to set a limit to his curse. The lord of Vycha's agreed, stating that after Zichand's demise, Sthana would regain his original form. With this assurance, the high-souled Sthana was freed from his anxiety. Thus, Bhishma concluded the tale of Zichand and Sthana, a story of transformation, consequence, and the complexities of fate that entwined these two characters in an intricate dance. The sun had barely risen over the vast army assembled before King Duryodhana. The young prince, eager to know the fate that awaited him and his kin, approached his grandfather Bhishma, a revered warrior and leader among the Kauravas. Sanjaya, a wise and loyal attendant of the king, stood by as Duryodhana asked his grandsire about the strength and weakness of their enemies. The Pandavas. Bhishma, with a hint of a smile on his face, began to explain the strategy that would be employed against their foes' ordinary combatants. He said, should be fought with straightforward valor, but those who possess the power of deception require a more cunning approach. He paused for a moment before continuing. I can annihilate the Pandava army, taking 10,000 ordinary warriors and 1,000 chariot warriors as my share each day. Haste in mail and exerting myself actively, I can finish this large force within a month. Sanjaya's voice carried on, recounting Duryodhana's curiosity about his preceptor Drona. The king approached the wise old warrior, seeking to know if he could vanquish their enemies as quickly as Bhishma had claimed. Drona smiled and replied, I am old now, my energy and activity have weakened, but with the fire of my weapons I can consume the army of the Pandavas, just like Bhishma, in a month's time. Sanjaya continued, noting that Kripa, another renowned warrior, believed he could annihilate the foe in 2 months. Timiswathaman, Drona's son, boasted that he would conquer the Pandavas within 10 nights, but it was Karna, the mighty Su's son, who made the boldest claim of all. He vowed to achieve victory over their enemies in just 5 days. The king lauded at this boast, saying, as long as you encounter not Partha with his arrows, Kanchan bows, and rushing to battle on his chariot with Vasudeva by his side, so long may you think that way. Karna's words were met with a mixture of amusement and skepticism from the king, but Sanjaya's voice remained steady, recounting the boasts and claims of each warrior. The sun had barely risen over the bustling camp of the Pandavas when Yudhishthira, the eldest son of Kunti, summoned his brothers to a private meeting. The weight of war hung heavy on their shoulders, and the king's words were laced with urgency. "My dear brothers," he began, "I have received news from our spies within the Kuru army, Duryodhana, that cunning prince has asked Bhishma, the great warrior, son of Ganga, how long it would take to annihilate us. And what did Bhishma say? In a month's time, he declared. But Drona, that master of the arts of war, said the same. In about a month, Kripa, a wise and venerable sage, echoed their sentiments. Yudhishthira paused, his eyes scanning the faces of his brothers, and then there was Drona's son, who boasted that he could complete the task in 10 nights, and Karna, that skilled warrior, claimed it would take him only 5 days. But what about you, Arjuna? What say you to this gathering of mighty warriors? Sarjuna, with his curly hair and piercing gaze, turned to his brothers before responding. All these men are formidable opponents, he said, accomplished in arms and skilled in the arts of warfare without a doubt. They could exterminate us. If they chose to do so, he paused, his eyes glinting with determination. But let our hearts be lightened by hope, dear brothers. With Vasudeva, my Oli, by my side, I know that we can vanquish even the greatest of foes. The celestial weapon given to me by Mahadeva himself still exists within me. A terrible and mighty force capable of destroying all created things in an instant. Arjuna's words hung in the air like a challenge. And as for our enemies, they are no ordinary men. Vishudrana, Kripa, and Drana's son, all of them possess celestial weapons and are eager to do battle. We have among us Saikhandan, Uyudhana, Praistadiyama, and many others who are equal in valor to the great Bhishma. And Drona Yudhishthira listened intently as Arjuna continued to speak. And what of our own forces? Do we not have among us mighty warriors like Bhimesna, those twins, Udamanu, Utmojas Bharata, Drupada, Sanka, and Abhimanyu, all of them capable of slaying even the gods themselves in battle? A king's eyes widened as Arjuna concluded his words. And what of you, dear brothers? You are each mighty warriors in your own right with prowess. Equal to that. The sun rose over the vast expanse of Kurukshetra, casting a golden glow over the assembled armies. The air was filled with an expectant hush as the kings, urged on by Duryodhana's fervent words, prepared to face their enemies. Pandavas, Dhritarashtra's son, had rallied his forces under a cloudless sky, and each king had taken care to purify themselves through ritual baths. They donned garlands of flowers and wore white robes, symbolizing their commitment to the battle ahead. With reverent hands, they poured libations onto the sacred fire, seeking blessings from the Brahmanas, who chanted benedictions over them as the armies readied for war. Vasampana watched in awe as the various divisions took shape. The sons of Avanti, led by Vinda and Anuvinda, marched at the forefront, followed closely by the Kekayas Malikas and Bharadwaja's son Aswathaman, Bhishma, and Jayadratha of Sindhu brought up the rear, their imposing figures a testament to their martial prowess. The southern and western kingdoms, along with those from the hilly regions, formed a formidable second division. At its head marched Sekuna, ruler of Gandharas, accompanied by his eastern and northern Olis, the Sivas, Vesas, Sakas, Karatas, Ivanas, and their mighty Maharathas. This great phalanx of warriors was a force to be reckoned with. As Kritavarman led his troops into position, Duryodhana's brothers, along with Sala, Hurasravasalya, and Vyadratha, formed the final division. The Dhritarashtra's, united in their quest for victory, took up their positions at the far end of Kurukshetra, their armor glinting like a sea of steel. Duryodhana's encampment shone like a second Hastinapur, its pavilions and tents rivaling those of his father's city. Even the most skilled artisans among the Hastinapurans would struggle to distinguish between the two. The Kuru king had spared no expense in preparing for this momentous occasion, lavishing attention on every detail. As night fell, the kings and their troops settled into their luxurious tents, each one a testament to Duryodhana's generosity. Provisions flowed like a river, catering to every need of the assembled warriors, and their retinues, even the vendors, traders, bards, and panegyrists, were well provided for, ensuring that all aspects of this grand spectacle would be taken care of. The armies rested beneath the star-filled sky, their hearts ablaze with anticipation as they prepared to face the Pandavas in the greatest battle India had ever known. The sun had just passed the winter solstice, marking the beginning of a new season. King Yudhishthira, son of Kantai and Dharma, stood on the outskirts of his kingdom, surrounded by his brave warriors like a mighty river overflowing its banks. The army was about to embark on a grand journey as the king's voice rang out across the landscape. His heroic warriors, stirred to life at their head, marched Trishadhyama, a slayer of foes and commander of force, leading the Chetas and Karushas into battle. Alongside him rode Virata, Drupada, Uyutanas, Saikhandan, and two mighty bowmen from Panchala, Udamanu and Uddamavyas. The warriors, clad in shining coats of mail and adorned with golden earrings, blazed forth like fires on the sacrificial altar. Their armor glinted in the sunlight as they prepared for battle. The king's order was clear: to march against their enemies and claim victory. As the army moved forward, its din echoed through the land. Men shouted, horses whinnied, and elephants trumpeted. The air vibrated with the sound of drums beating out a rhythm that seemed to touch the heavens themselves. Behind them marched King Yudhishthira, accompanied by Virata, Drupada, and other monarchs. The army's divisions were carefully arranged, each one a finely tuned
Machi and ready to strike at its enemy in the first division. Bimizna led the sons of Draupadi Abdominaculus Sahadeva, and the Pravhedrakes along with 10,000 horses, 2,000 elephants, and 10,000 foot soldiers in the middle division. Virata and Jayatsena marched alongside Utamenu and Automalius, those two mighty car warriors from Panchala. Vasudeva and Dhananjaya walked among them, their faces set with determination. Behind them came thousands of combatants, armed to the teeth and ready for battle. Warriors' banners flapped in the wind as they marched forward, their armor glinting in the sunlight. The king's army was a sea of steel, its waves crashing against the shore like the mighty current of Ganga itself. As Yudhishthira led his troops into battle, he relied on their strength and bravery to overcome their enemies. The sound of drums grew louder still as the army moved forward, its rhythm being out the cadence that echoed through the land. Thousands of elephants, steeds, and cars followed in their wake, along with countless foot soldiers armed with bows, swords, and masses. The air was filled with the scent of sweet metal and dust as the army marched on its divisions, spread out like a great fan, each